Mother who new at 5 charges expected soon in the case of a Pontiac mother who deputies say abandoned 3 kids for years at home. The sheriff saying they were living in filthy conditions, relying on weekly food drop-offs. Tonight, the community able to support those children, and today I reached out to their grandfather by phone. He says he's aware of the donations coming in, but he's not ready to say much more yet.
I have never in my 60 years of living heard of nobody not checking on nobody.
Talking with me outside the home on Lydia Lane, where children were recently discovered abandoned, a friend of their grandfather expressing outrage.
I just can't see it. I mean, it's just sad.
Deputies say the mother was arrested after a welfare check led to discovery of girls ages 12 and 13 and a boy age 15 left alone for several years. They say mold, human waste, and garbage was found throughout, and the sisters were found locked in a bathroom. Today I visited both the home and sheriff's office as deputies gathered donations of clothing for the kids who are now staying with family. Can you speak to the great need that these children have for assistance?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, having not been outside the house for literally at least since 2021, if not longer, there's a lot of things that they don't have.
Deputies say the children had not been to school in years and the girls were sleeping on pizza boxes. While unavailable for an interview today, their grandfather telling me by phone he was not aware of what horrible conditions the children were living in, and their father was also not notified. Both are now involved in helping them.
We're going to try to get them up to date, fresh and clean clothing, give them a sense of value and worth.
We've learned the kids were all taken to the hospital with signs of severe neglect, and their case is being reviewed by Child Protective Services. Among the questions, how something like this could happen and why they were not found sooner.
You know, you got to check on them. You know, they can't fend for themselves. You know, you got to check on kids. It's heartbreaking.
Donations continue to be accepted on behalf of the kids, and we put all that information on our website, wxyz.com. As for the mother, she remains in custody, and I'm told charges could be coming as soon as tomorrow.
Has been arrested. What else can you tell us?
Yeah, that's right. The mother has been arrested, Pam, but we're told that these kids were actually inside of this house for years, at least since 2021. This is the house behind me that has that orange sticker right there on the window, but we're told these kids were only 12, 13, and 15. Now, authorities, they said that the mom would drop off food from time to time, but she's a 34-year-old woman that's now being held at the Oakland County Jail, with the case now being turned over to the prosecutor for review. We are expecting charges to come in the next few days or so, but the only reason authorities ever stepped in the first place was because the landlord actually called 911. He contacted deputies after not hearing from the mother since about December, and that's what started this welfare check. Take a look at some of this video from inside of the place. We're told that the house was just so unsanitary that evidence techs, they had to wear hazmat suits in order to investigate. Now, we're talking about piles of garbage in rooms as high as 4 feet tall, human feces overflowing in the toilet, and then also the bathtubs. Apparently, they were living on that food that people would bring nearby. Even also, strangers would sometimes bring that food up to the door. Now, also, we are being told that the mother had not spoken to the 2 girls that were in there for years, but she would go and actually speak to the son from time to time. The kids were not in school. They actually spent their entire time at the home watching TV and then playing video games. The conditions in the house were so bad that the kids had to sleep on the floor, the boy had a mattress, and the girls had to sleep on pizza boxes. So we're actually going to go and hear from Sheriff Michael Bouchard on what these kids are now having to go through, as well as what they now have to bounce back from.
Our first focus is in trying to make sure these kids get what they need to begin the process of moving forward. The second very important part of this is, how did 3 kids fall through the cracks so terribly? How did the community, relatives, the schools, no one knew to reach out to us? How did that happen? And so that's going to be a big part of what I've already directed our investigations to figure out.
Now, while all of this was going on inside of the house, we're told that they ended up finding the mother at a different location. And so we're going to have more on what residents living nearby they have to say about this. That's coming up at 11 p.m. Victor Williams, Local 4.
Yeah, literally. I mean, I found out about this on my way into work this afternoon, and there are no words. I mean, this is absolutely horrific. This is by far, I think, one of the worst stories we've ever covered here at Fox 2. And I want to warn everybody out there that the details are very disturbing.
If you think about the horrific ads you see on TV to spur donations for animals that have been abused or are living in terrible conditions, multiply that by 10.
A horrible story of abuse and abandonment. Investigators say 3 kids were living in a condo on Lydia Lane in Pontiac for years, alone in horrific conditions.
There was garbage, trash piled 3 and 4 feet high, covered with feces all through the house. It doesn't look like the toilet or the bathtub had been usable or workable for quite some time, primarily because of the feces and trash. I don't think they had basic hygiene knowledge of what to do. They hadn't been given hygiene products for years, toothbrushes, etc.
A 15-year-old boy and 2 girls ages 12 and 13 in the House of Horrors since at least 2021, according to the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. Their mother or someone else would leave prepared food on the porch once a week.
They had basically been locked in the house without any kind of guidance or basic hygiene or any kind of education for years.
The kids were discovered Friday. The landlord called police and asked them to do a welfare check because he had not heard from the mother since December.
We went to the house to check on what was going on there and had no idea that there were kids there, let alone kids in grave situation.
Their 34-year-old mother arrested and being held at the Oakland County Jail. The children taken to an area hospital and are now in the care of a family member.
We showed up at the house. The young boy did have communication with the mom and said the police were there, and she said hide. When we took the kids out of the house, they had difficulty walking because their toenails were so long. They hadn't had any grooming. Incredibly disheveled and unkempt, hair very matted, filthy.
Authorities trying to figure out how this abuse went on for so long without anyone knowing about it.
It's pretty heartbreaking that the kids would have to live under those conditions. People just kind of get in their car and go. Another of my neighbors, we were just talking today, and she said to me, she says, look at all this snow. I don't see anybody out helping each other, shovel each other's snow. So I think people are just kind of just doing their own thing now and just kind of going in their places and closing the doors.
Still just so incredibly hard to believe that these kids were in this condo for so many years, never seeing the sunlight, never trying to leave. They were apparently spending their time watching TV and playing games, not in school. We know that they had been enrolled in Pontiac schools years ago, but what happened? Why did they fall through the cracks? And it just, I mean, it's mind-boggling. The girls that we talked about, ages 12 and 13, the sheriff says they were sleeping on pizza boxes, old pizza boxes. A lot more to come on this story, but just absolutely heartbreaking.
Folks need to maybe think a little more about what's happening next door and speak up if they see anything suspicious, so something like this doesn't have to go on for so long.
Yeah, I talked to another neighbor, and she'd only lived there since September, and she said she never heard anything, saw anything, smell anything. Those condos are so close together, but I think that, it makes us pause and just think how busy we all are in our own lives, but maybe we need to think if we never see anyone coming and going, and maybe if we see, people did see that food being dropped off at that porch, that maybe we need to start asking more questions and start figuring out what's going on if something doesn't seem right. But I mean, why these kids were basically, they were locked in there for at least 4 years. I mean, like you said, this story it's hard to wrap your head around.
So what we know now is that the deputies, when they came here, they found 3 children inside of the townhome: a 15-year-old boy, a 13-year-old girl, and a 12-year-old girl, all siblings. And as of course this investigation is ongoing, there are a lot of unanswered questions that need to be answered, like how any neighbor, any of the public schools here in Pontiac, or even Child Protective Services did not know about these kids or do anything about it since at least 2020 or 2021, when the mother supposedly abandoned these kids. So I spoke to Sheriff Michael Bouchard earlier today, and we're going to have more on this story later tonight at CBS Detroit at 11. For now, here in Pontiac, I'm Heath Kalb, CBS News Detroit.
Pontiac are reeling after investigators arrested a 34-year-old mother who's accused of abandoning her 3 children in a filthy home. CBS News Detroit's Elaine Rojas Castillo is at the Oakland County Sheriff's Office with how the community is responding.
Just days after Oakland County sheriffs found 3 children living in deplorable conditions, the community stepped up, offering to help.
It's really heartbreaking to hear what happened to those kids. You know, it's just gets me really upset. So I just thought if there's something we could do, we should do it.
Over the weekend, deputies were called to the 600 block of Lydia Lane after a landlord reported not hearing from the children's mother since December and feared that something may have happened. When they arrived, they found the home in terrible shape, with an overflowing toilet, mold and human waste throughout, and some rooms with garbage in piles 4 feet high. Among the squalor, deputies found 3 children at the home, a 15-year-old boy, a 13-year-old girl, and a 12-year-old girl, who were wearing soiled clothing with matted hair and toenails that were several inches long.
It's really sad, you know, what those kids had to go through for multiple years that, you know, they were neglected and abandoned.
In a statement, Pontiac School's interim superintendent, Dr. Kimberly Leverett, said, quote, "The Pontiac community has been shaken by the horrifying story of the 3 children who were discovered suffering from extreme neglect this past weekend. As a school district, we are working with the Oakland County Sheriff's Department to assist in any way we can. As educators, our hearts are breaking for these children and what they have endured over the past several years. We are grateful to the Oakland County Sheriff's Department, the Oakland County Prosecutor, and all who are working on investigating and prosecuting this case." Residents like Victoria Gallert say they were shocked at what they heard and wanted to show their support.
I don't want to judge anyone for what they're going through, what hardships they're going through, but I think, you know, try to focus on the positives and that there's a community willing to help and we should help.
Donations for the children are being accepted at the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. Investigators say they were taken to the hospital for evaluation and are now in the custody of relatives. In Pontiac, Elaine Rojas Castillo, CBS News Detroit.